Good morning. Today we're going to learn how to thread a sewing machine. So let's just begin. We're going to need our bobbin, which is a separate lesson, how to thread a bobbin, and our spool of thread. We're going to start with about a foot of thread hanging off of our spool, and we're going to remove our thread cap from our thread arm. We're going to slide our spool of thread onto the thread arm and put that cap back on to keep our thread in place. Then we're going to follow the 4 steps of threading the machine through the guides. We're going to start with step 1, which is a latch at the top of the machine, and it points down and leads us to step 2. Step 2 shows us that we should go up and under. And then step 3 is a bit of a crane arm that shows us we go behind and back down through this long notch in the machine. This crane arm of sorts is metal, and it's controlled by this lever we have on the side of the machine. We're going to make sure it's at the top, and then we can slide behind that notch, and we'll feel sort of a click. And as the arrow directs us, we'll go back down towards step 4. We'll go behind and down, like our arrows show us, towards our needle. And then one last step that's not numbered is a little latch at the top of the needle that will go behind just to keep our thread in place as we sew, so we get a nice smooth stitch. At that point, we're going to trim our thread because it can kind of get fuzzy at this point. And we want to make sure it's nice and trimmed at an angle so we can thread our needle. So go ahead and thread that needle through the center and bring that thread through the center of our foot beneath the needle. If it's not raised, you want to go ahead and raise it with this lever here and just bring that through the center. Next, we're going to do our bobbin. It's a drop-in bobbin. This is our throat plate and bobbin cover. We're going to pop that bobbin cover with this little lever here. Drop our bobbin down in, and you'll see another arrow guiding us through this bobbin step, and it suggests pulling the thread to the left, and we're just going to pull it through this notch. This takes some practice, it's not that intuitive, but we're going to pull it through this notch until we feel sort of a click. At that point, we're going to intertwine the top thread and the bottom thread, which gives us our stitches as we go along with our projects. We're going to use this lever to lower the needle, and then that bobbin will start to spin, and you'll see the threads intertwine. Once you start to see that, I like to karate chop through with my scissors, and that'll bring that bobbin thread up to the top. So that we got the thread from the bottom with our bobbin, and the thread that we threaded through the machine at the top. We can go ahead and place that bobbin cover back on and start sewing our first project. Let's pretend this is a pillow. We've pinned it about a 1/2 inch from the edge, and that's giving us our 1/2 inch seam allowance. It gives us a little wiggle room and allows us to create a really crisp seam. And 1/2 inch is a really good place to start as a beginner sewer. I've got my speed at 3 and my stitch length at 3 and my speed pretty low. And what we're going to do now is start sewing. So we're going to make sure our foot is up. There's a lever here that lowers and picks it back up. We want to make sure it's up, slide our project in, and then lower it. We're going to take those pins out as we go. We're going to start sewing using our pedal, and then we're going to do a back stitch just to make sure we're getting a nice strong seam. And that means we'll sew forward, hold our back stitch lever, and then sew back. And we're just sewing on that same line, that imaginary line we've created with a 1/2 inch seam allowance with our pins. Then we're going to continue sewing down that imaginary line. And then the next step, if we want to change directions, is pivoting. We want to make sure our needle is down. So if we were to land with it up, we just lower it with this lever on the side. We're going to pick up our foot with this lever and then pivot our project. That's the best way to do it so our seam doesn't get disturbed. And then lastly, we're going to sew all the way to the end. And just a strong back stitch to finish. We're gonna raise the foot, wiggle the project out, trim it. You can trim some more when you're really done. There, we've got it. All done. Go ahead and trim your project, and you've done your first threading and sewing of a seam. Thanks.